Brand new launch from Titleist. It's exciting. It's the T-Series. We've got 4 brand new models, and I tell you what, these look phenomenal. Stay tuned to this video. So, brand new T-Series lineup from Titleist. These look incredible. We've got T100 T150, that's been a little bit revamped. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We've got a brand new T250, a newer version to the T200. Unbelievable look on that particular one. There's another little option in there as well in the 250 we're going to talk a little bit about in this video. And then of course we've got the T350, the more game improvement, which again looks incredible. Right, so we're going to kick things off. We're going to start with the 350 and then work our way back down to eventually the T100. I've hit some balls inside the studio on TrackMan, so I've got some real dry ball data which we're going to show you as we work through this, but I want to hit these outside off the turf, give you some feel or some ideas of how it interacts through the turf and the sort of ball flight as well. So T350, this looks fantastic. Yes, it's a larger profile. It's the most forgiving of the options that Titleist are bringing out here, but a very clean look on the back of it now. Beautifully clean. It very much looks a premium players club. Obviously, when we turn it over, we see a slightly thicker sole, thicker top edge, little bit of offset and a longer blade length, as you're going to expect. Hollow construction, but with a forged L-cup face. So as you appreciate, moving it into that playing position by the ball, I say a little bit of offset, medium to thickish top line. There's plenty of confident inspiring down by that golf ball, but a beautiful shape, satin chrome finish, so there's nothing that's glaring at you. Beautiful look to this. I've got the same shaft, same spec in all of these 7 irons, and this is a 7 iron, obviously I just mentioned there, but 350 comes in at 29 degrees of loft 7 irons. Obviously it's going to be strong, fast ball speeds and a high ball flight. And the big thing that Titleist are working on now with all these irons is land angle, control, and getting that ball coming in at a certain angle, which is going to give you the maximum control. Whether it's a game improvement iron where you're striving for distance, or you're in your T100 and you're looking for a lot of control, they're trying to get that land angle throughout the set at a very consistent degree. So as you probably expect in this hollow head, there's a little bit of a clickier sound to that. It's not abrasive, it's not overpowering by any means, but just going to get that little clickier sound to it. Yes, it says forged, but it is a forged face only with a stainless steel body. And that's a beautiful high ball flight there. It's a nice feel off the club face, feels quite powerful. Probably going to see a little bit more ball speed with this iron because of the loft really in at 29 degrees, but by any means that isn't coming out too flat. The flight's there. So obviously the real talking point around the 350 is forgiveness and fast ball speed. So we've got split tungsten inside the head internally, low toe and heel. You're going to see that running throughout these 4 models that we're talking about, which is obviously going to help massively with MOI, resistance to twist essentially on those sort of miss hits. L-cup face, so trying to keep ball speed up on low hits is again another huge talking point. And we've got that impact technology in there, which is trying to control a little bit of that sound. As I sort of mentioned, with this hollow construction, we tend to sort of see that little clickier feel or sound to it. So availability in the T350, we've got a 4 iron through to pitching wedge, and then we've got a few different wedge options. Because the lofts are stronger, we see more gap wedges appear in these sets, don't we? So the pitch wedge is coming at 43, we've got another wedge at 48 and a potential another gap wedge at 53. Very much sort of more blendable is what Titleist is saying between these sets, and what they mean by that is more of the look of the iron, a bit more uniform from the 350 to the T250 to the 150 and also that 100. I'll show you some close-ups between the head shapes. You do sort of see some very similar shaping, so there isn't one that jumps out that looks ridiculously different to another, so potentially blending is possible. So when I first saw the images of these new irons, there was one particular one that really jumped out to me and I caught my eye, and that was the new T250. Obviously a new generation to the T200. The T200, we saw that plastic badge at the back, tapped on it, felt very sort of bit cheap in a way, if I'm going to say anything, but this looks fantastic. This is as clean as they look. You look at the back, you think this is a blade iron. So I would say those golfers who may be aspiring to play that player's iron, that more beautiful, clean looking, bladey type, but maybe just need that little bit of help, this looks incredible from the back. Bottom of the sole, again, slightly thicker as you're going to expect in this particular iron, a little bit less than the 350, but going to be a little bit wider than the 150 and the 100, but the shaping of the head is stunning. Down by that golf ball here now, that is a beautiful looking head. And when we put this up against the 150 and the 100, it's so subtle to see the differences between these models. Yes, the 250 ever so slight longer blade length, but the top edge a fraction thicker, but the shaping makes it really difficult to actually tell the difference. So again, blending these irons would be very easy. There's not going to be a huge jump of the looks as you switch into them. And there's still that, obviously, that element of that little clicky sound to that. Again, it's still hollow construction. We've got a forged face, but not fully forged. So in this iron head, we're seeing some similar technology we've just seen in the 350. We've got, again, split tungsten in there. So very much aimed at sort of, you know, again, forgiveness levels, high launching, that descent angle. We're going to keep talking about that. And we've got that impact technology there, which is just helping, again, with controlling that sound. That's gorgeous. It feels brilliant through the turf there with that sole, if I'm being honest. And again, that flight is so similar to what we've just seen with that 350. So the loft on this 79 is 30.5, so that puts it into that player's distance category that is very, very popular nowadays, isn't it? And availability on these run from a 2-iron all the way through to a pitching wedge and a gap wedge. Now obviously the 2-iron and the 3-iron and even the 4-iron there available in that more of that, what we call that utility. Sometimes they come with option of that graphite shaft as standard in those longer irons. They're probably more off the tee sort of club, aren't they? Which we'll do a separate video on the utilities that will come hopefully soon to the channel. But a great option here, as I say, 30.5 degree loft with a 7-iron. Great option to maybe pop this in your longer iron, similar like we just talked about there, and blend then into maybe the 150s in your scoring irons. And that's a joy to hit, really is. Just a bit on that clicky sound. It is a little bit louder there. I do probably going to prefer the T150 100 just pure on the feel of the sound. So there is another iron in this 250 lineup here, which is, I think, a great addition. We've seen other brands do this, to be honest, and Titleist have now brought this into their equation as well. So it's the T250 launch iron. Basically, it's a higher lofted set, exactly the same technology, just with more loft, so for more launch, maybe for that slower swing speed. But if you're the type of golfer that love the traditional lofting, you're going to love the launch spec. Right, moving now on into the T150. We saw this introduction a couple of degrees stronger than the T100 previously, which gave us a little bit more forgiveness, bit more ball speed. Loft has stayed the same in this particular lineup in the 150s at 32 degree for the 7-iron. The lofts on the T100s have changed. We're going to come to that shortly. Very much more blendable now between the 150 and the 100, and we've seen a lot of this happening out on tour. Maybe the 150 going in those longer irons and the 100s in those scoring irons, much more blendable, as I mentioned. 150 slightly bigger than the T100, but do you know what? If I put them side by side, I can hardly tell. The only thing that just splits them for me is the top edge on the 150 is just ever so slightly thicker. Blade length looks the same to me, and also the width of the sole looks the same. It probably is a little bit wider, but there's not a lot in it. Again, helps with that blending, I think, through the set. Beautiful look down by that golf ball, minimal offset now, medium to slim top line, bit more squat than the blade length, looks fantastic. And that is a beautiful feel. That's your forged feel. We're more one-piece forging now, whole head. Yes, we've got some split tungsten yet again in the head, helping with that CG location, helping with the forgiveness, splitting that heel and the toe. We've got a channel, a muscle channel here in the back of the head. You can just about see that little slot in the back of that cavity. That increases in the longer irons, so that's helping to shift the CG lower and deeper in the head, which allows in those longer irons a little bit more ball speed and a little bit more flight for those approach shots into the green. Again, all thinking about this land angle. So obviously as we move into these irons, we're going to see typically a little bit more consistency, and that's what Titleist are really sort of trying to aim at here. So with the grooves, very much the same as the T100 in trying to create more of a consistent spin number for these particular golf clubs. Again, the golfer who probably goes into this is just wanting a very tight front to back dispersion. All these irons actually have that VFT, that variable face thickness, even the 350, 250, 150 and 100, which is really sort of helping on those miss hits. And that just glides through that turf, that sole. We've got a variable bounce system on the sole here, so leading edge, trailing edge, so it just allows that exit or entry and exit through the turf much more cleaner, keeping the speed up. We've lost that clicky sound to this iron now that we saw in the more the hollow construction. That's a little bit toey, but do you know what, that flight is exactly the same. Really like that. Oh wow, gorgeous. I think as we work through these models here, you know, the peak of that height to me visually looks exactly the same. It hasn't changed, so I'm guessing that land angle, which we're going to look at again in those TrackMan numbers soon, is going to be very, very consistent here. So that's a big thing that Titleist have talked about. So availability in the 150, we've got a 3-iron running through to pitching wedge and then also a gap wedge. As I mentioned, this could be very blendable in the T100, which we're going to take a look at now. And this is an incredibly popular iron, especially on tour. Lots of tour players going into this. Obviously there is a CB iron, there's an MB iron, but a lot do choose to go in the T100, and I get it. You know, the lofts here are pretty traditional, the shaping is fantastic, it looks beautiful, very simple, but you've got some help inside the head. Again, split tungsten, we see this theme running right through all of these irons, which is going to help massively on that forgiveness. So I think when you look at both of these irons in comparison to last year's models, there's not a huge change at the back. We've got a little cavity, that sort of deeper back section. Obviously the T100 sole gets a little bit narrower, variable bounce as we just talked about. Now the T100 is slightly different on the lofts than the previous model. This is now 33 degrees 7/9, so it's 1 degree stronger from where the previous T100 model used to be. So obviously that blends it a lot closer to that T150. So if you are going to blend, you're probably not going to see as much of a gapping issue between the two irons as you blend. So as I mentioned before, maybe 150 could be a great option in those longer irons, a little bit higher launch, a little bit maybe more forgiveness than the 100 in those scoring irons for a little bit more precise accuracy. So again, it looks fantastic down by the ball, minimal offset, thinner top line as I mentioned before against the 150, but honestly there's not a huge amount of difference between those two models. But again, solid feel. I mean, that's fully forged. It's multi-material now. We've got the tungsten in there, haven't we? But I tell you what, that's a stunning feel. Muted sound, beautiful feedback. So as I mentioned in the 150, the muscle channel in the back of the cavity in the 3 and 4 iron in the 100s just gets a little bit deeper, so that allows a little bit more that higher launch and a little bit more that speed in that 3 and 4 iron. Yeah, so availability wise in the 100s is 3 iron all the way through to pitching wedge as well as that gap wedge again. So we're just going to take a quick look at all the dispersion rings and a little bit of data through all those models in the T-Series irons. And if we look at the side-on view first, and just between like the 350, the 200, the 150 and also the 100, you can see all those peak heights are very, very similar. The descent angle, as we've talked about here, are very, very similar as you work through each of those models. And then looking at the averages of each of the shots here, I think what's a surprising one there for me is a little bit of the 350 and the 250. Actually went very similar distances, got a bit more spin, funny enough, with the 350. I'd expect that to be the other way around. And I think, to be honest, the 350 I didn't quite strike as good as the other models, if I'm being brutally honest. So when you walk into the 150, you see a jump up in spin numbers there, again, as well as the 100, so ultimate sort of control there. But again, what Titleist are really talking about is that land angle, super, super consistent, 50-degree mark pretty much all the way through all of those models. So a great launch from Titleist there. Appreciate you watching the video as always, and hopefully we'll catch you all very soon.